Hello there. Welcome to the Kwedu report. My name is Harry. I'm joining you from our main studios here in Sydney, New South Wales. The World Health Organization has declared an emergency after an outbreak of Ebola in East Africa. The Zimbabwean government has announced 4.48 metric tons of gold reserves. The Iran war has triggered a global shortage of fertilizers, with farmers in the US hard hit. Iranian hackers have also descended on the US. And in Australia, political leaders continue to clash after the presentation of the federal budget, with Opposition Leader Angus Taylor targeting permanent residents. Once again, thank you for joining us. Opposition Leader Angus Taylor has pledged to impose one of what he calls the largest cuts to immigration in Australia, capping intake to match housing completions. In his response to the federal budget, Taylor also proposed restricting crucial welfare benefits exclusively to citizens. Now, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese immediately responded to Angus' insinuations while in Tasmania, accusing him of adopting what he calls one nation's tactics. Albanese criticized Taylor for drawing artificial distinctions between migrants and Australians, arguing that permanent residents play an important role in the country, contributing significantly to the tax base. Are they separate from Australians? Albanese said. Addressing budget replies, the Prime Minister also affirmed what he calls the value of immigrants, stating, "I was born here. I'm a proud Australian, but also I know that there are people who came here and built a life in business, in politics, in civil society, in communities right around this great country, and are proud Australians as well," Albanese said. In the US, black church leaders are set to march in Selma this weekend over Voting Rights Act ruling. Now, nearly 100 faith and voting rights leaders are expected to march in the US, with organizers warning the ruling could eliminate up to 19 majority seats across the south of the country. Nearly 100 faith and voting rights leaders will gather in Selma, Alabama on Saturday and march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, protesting the Supreme Court's decision that hollowed out a key provision of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Now, the 6-3 Supreme Court ruling in Carlos v. Louisiana has gutted the Voting Rights Act by apparently allowing states to eliminate black majority districts. This has the effect of reversing legal protections that previously prevented discriminatory voting maps. Analysts have estimated that up to 19 of the Congressional Black Caucus 62 members could lose their U.S. House seats, while the Republican majorities in the southern states are moving to eliminate black representation through gerrymandered maps. The march organizers expect nearly 5,000 attendees at the All Roads Lead to the South rally, aiming to channel national awareness, resources, and support to state and local organizations on the front lines of the voting rights fight. Now, participants view the effort as a defense against a rollback of black political representation akin to the Jim Crow, drawing parallels to the 1960s civil rights movement to overcome the ruling's effect. The significant voting developments happen in the US. Now, going back to Zimbabwe, the Southern African country, Zimbabwe's tobacco production has hit new highs under the smallholder contract. Now, Zimbabwe is Africa's leading producer of tobacco. Tobacco farming in Zimbabwe has rebounded to record levels. This has followed a chaotic land reform in 2000. But this latest development has been driven largely by smallholders, farmers contracted to Chinese firms. Among them, Sola Reed, a 64-year-old farmer, is one of the 300 farmers growing tobacco in the southern Matabeleland region, which historically is not tobacco region. Now, maize was not profitable as it was prone to disease, Sola told AFP, hoping for a rewarding harvest in his new venture. Now, around 95% of Zimbabwe's more than 127,000 registered tobacco farmers are contracted smallholder farmers who account for 85% of all output, the Zimbabwe Tobacco Board has said. And most are contracted to Chinese firms in a model that has pushed the country's tobacco crop to new highs, despite obvious concerns about debt and deforestation. Of course, this is a massive turnaround following Zimbabwe's chaotic land reform of 2000. Now, President Emmerson Mnangagwa, in a related development, has said Zimbabwe's gold reserves have hit 4.48 metric tons. President Emmerson Mnangagwa on Monday visited the country's central bank, where he inspected vaults and confirmed that the gold reserves now stand at 4.48 metric tons. In February 2026, the Zimbabwean Central Bank held around 4.2 metric tons of gold in its central bank reserves. These reserves are critical and are an anchor for the country's gold-backed currency, the ZiG or Zim gold, which was introduced back then in April 2024. Mnangagwa said after the talk, following my directive 2 years ago to accumulate mineral royalties in physical form, our gold reserves have increased considerably. So that's Mnangagwa there, speaking after touring the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. Presently, Zimbabwe proudly ranks 11th in Africa and 3rd in the SADC region for official gold reserves. Now, Mnangagwa's latest remarks on Zimbabwe's growing gold reserves once again have placed a spotlight, an obvious spotlight, on the country's gold-backed currency, the ZiG. And analysts are still questioning and debating whether it can finally restore public confidence in the nation's monetary policy. Of course, Zimbabwe has been rocked by continuous inflation, record inflation levels for many years. Now, staying in Africa, we go to East Africa, where the World Health Organization has declared a health emergency over Ebola outbreak in Congo and Uganda. The outbreak has caused more than 300 suspected cases and 88 reported deaths, and officials have warned of further escalation. On Sunday, the World Health Organization Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus declared the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda a public health emergency of international concern, posing risks to neighboring countries. Quite concerning there, and a fresh outbreak of Ebola in Congo and Uganda. Officials first identified the Bundibugyo strain in the DRC's Ituri province near Uganda and South Sudan on Friday. The Africa Center for Disease Control and Prevention reported 336 suspected cases and 87 deaths by Saturday. Health officials have further added and described the outbreak as extraordinary because there are no approved Bundibugyo virus-specific therapeutics or vaccines at the moment. This marks the 17th Ebola outbreak in the DRC since 1976. 2 laboratory confirmed cases were reported in Kampala, Uganda on Friday and Saturday, involving patients who traveled from the DRC. The cases had no apparent links to each other, the World Health Organization said. The WHO further advised against closing international borders, recommending that immediate isolation of confirmed cases and no international travel until 21 days after exposure. Now, the World Health Organization also advised that countries should also implement cross-border screening and national disaster management mechanisms. We go to the US, where the Iran war has caused some devastating effect on farmers in Iowa, where farmers are facing uncertainty supply of fertilizers. They're facing a crisis of fertilizer, imposing a clampdown on their own exports of fertilizers. Nitrogen fertilizer prices have gone up 25%. US farmers are unable to afford enough fertilizer prices, which have jumped from around 400 to nearly 600 per ton early in the Iran war, with China, which supplies 10% of global exports, tightening curbs in April, pressuring US farmers during the planting season. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz, which handles 30% of global ammonia exports, has exacerbated market consolidation. Mosaic alone controls 75% to 80% of phosphate production, leaving farmers vulnerable to supply shocks. Diesel costs rose 54.4% to 5.67% by May 14, according to Brown University, while 86 American firms filed for Chapter 12 bankruptcy in the first quarter of 2026. The Trump administration has suspended the Jones Act for 150 days to improve fertilizer logistics, though critics argue increased nitrogen production would save industrial demands rather than farmers' immediate needs. Now, still in the US, experts have warned high fertilizer prices may persist through at least 2027, while persistent drought conditions will continue to threaten yields and consumers in the United States. And this could force price shocks in bread ISOs later in the year. Now we come back to Australia, where a bus has crashed after being pelted with rocks by e-bike riders. Police in Australia are searching for a group of e-bike riders who pelted a Gold Coast bus with rocks, causing it to leave the road and crash on Saturday night. At around 11:23 p.m., the group ambushed the passenger bus on Chimangum Street in Currumbin and began throwing rocks at the bus. Now, the driver lost control of the vehicle, which had 5 passengers on board, and it crashed head-on onto a tree. Meanwhile, the driver was taken to Robina Hospital for observation as a precaution. The police confirmed in a statement. Meanwhile, police are appealing to anyone who may have witnessed the crash or who has relevant dashcam or CCTV footage to come forward and help police with the investigations. Now, Tom Kinsey, Executive General Manager of Kinetic, the bus company, or the company that owns the buses, said in a statement, no one on the bus was injured. Now, staying in Australia, a passenger has been banned from Qantas flights after a plane diverted amid claims a crew member was beaten by a passenger. A man has been banned from all Qantas flights after allegedly biting a crew member on a flight from Melbourne to the United States recently, forcing the flight to divert to Tahiti. The plane was forced to land in Papeete, Tahiti, where local authorities came on board the aircraft and quickly arrested the passenger. The plane was later refueled and able to complete its journey to Dallas, USA, while the passenger has been banned from all Qantas group flights, which includes Jetstar. Staying in Australia, a suspicious death probe has commenced after a man falls from a Sydney balcony. A man has died in Sydney after falling from the balcony of a unit complex in Sydney's northwest, with police treating the death as suspicious. Now, emergency services were told shouting was coming from a balcony of a unit on Crane Road in Castle Hill at around 2:40 a.m. in Sydney, Australia. When paramedics arrived, they found a 44-year-old man with serious injuries in a garden outside the unit. They started treating him straight away, but he unfortunately died on the scene. Police have begun an investigation and set up a crime scene at the place. The police further have said they are treating the death as suspicious. We go back to East Africa, to Rwanda this time around, where Rwandan genocide suspect Kabunga has died in custody at The Hague, aged 91. Now, the International Court ordered an inquiry after the 93-year-old died while hospitalized in UN custody, ending a case that told over his dementia. The 1994 genocide triggered by the death of President Juvenal Habyarimana saw Hutu extremists kill more than 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutus in 100 days. Quite devastating there. Now, prosecutors accused Kabuga of using Radio Television Libre des Miraculously to fuel the genocide violence. Authorities arrested Kabuga in France in 2020, entering more than 2 decades on the run. Although his initial trial began in 2022, judges ruled him unfit to continue trial due to dementia. Now, the United Nations Court ordered an investigation into the circumstances of his death. Kabuga apparently had remained in detention because no state would accept his provisional release. Now, as one of the last genocide fugitives of the Rwandan genocide, Kabuga's death leaves survivors in Rwanda without a final verdict, angering those who felt the court's fitness decision denied them justice. Of course, this is one of the most sad chapters in the history of the world. More than 800,000 people dying in this genocide. The Pakistan minister has arrived in Tehran to try and broker peace talks between Iran and the US. Now, he is trying to revive peace talks between the US and Iran, officials said. On Saturday, Pakistan Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi arrived in Tehran for an official 2-day visit to facilitate stalled peace talks between the United States and Iran, the Iranian state media reported. A ceasefire announced on April 9 largely halted fighting from the April 28 US-Israeli attack, yet negotiations between Washington and Tehran remain stalled despite diplomatic efforts. Meanwhile, Field Marshal Asim Munir of Pakistan has led a Pakistan delegation on a 3-day visit to Tehran in April in an effort the Iranian Interior Minister Iskander Momeni praised as key to resolving regional tensions, and in particular this Israeli-US war on Iran. Parliament Speaker Mohammadi Bagher Ghalibaf of Iran has warned on Tuesday that Washington must accept Iran's proposal or face failure, claiming the ceasefire is on life support after President Donald Trump rejected Iranian counter offer. Meanwhile, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi stated on Friday that Tehran received messages from Washington indicating that the Trump administration remains willing to continue negotiations, while Nagif met Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian. Now, in Israel, the Israeli government has said it has killed the leader of Hamas military wing, one of the architects of the October 7 attacks on Israel that killed more than 2,000 Israelis. Now, Israel said the strike killed one of Hamas' last senior commanders who helped the plan on October 7. The attack that held also Israeli hostages during the war and killed thousands. On Friday, Israel said Din Haddad, the leader of Hamas Qassam brigades, was killed in a Gaza City strike. His family and officials confirmed the death of this senior commander, an architect of the October 7 attacks, known as the Ghost of the Al-Qassam. Haddad assumed leadership of the militant group's military wing after his predecessor, Mohammed Sinwar, was killed, according to Israeli officials. Now, former hostages Liri Albag and Emily Damari celebrated the news, with Damari stating, "It's official, Raz al-Din al-Haddad has been eliminated." Now, the Friday strike also injured 6 people near Al-Shifa Hospital. On the same issue, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz stated Haddad held hostages with severe cruelty and refused to implement the agreement led by President Donald Trump to disarm Hamas. Now, despite a fragile U.S. brokered ceasefire, Nikolai Mladenov, a former UN Special Coordinator for the Middle East peace process, noted that disarmament remains a hurdle in the area. He cautioned Israel's full withdrawal on Hamas stepping back from governance and decommissioning its weapons. Now, going back to the US, Iranian hackers are suspected to have targeted a gas station in the US. US officials suspect Iranian hackers breached automatic tank gauge systems monitoring fuel storage at gas stations across multiple states in the US in the past week. The attackers exploited internet-connected password-free devices and altered display readings. In some cases, though no physical damage or fuel level changes occurred. Now, the breach raises serious safety concerns because it compromises tank gauges, which could theoretically hide dangerous fuel leaks from detection. Now, 75% of Americans surveyed say the Iranian conflict has already negatively affected their finances. That's in a related development, confirming Iranian involvement could intensify political debate over rising gas prices. Now, still on the Iranian hacking issue, multiple sources acknowledge that definitively identifying Iran as the perpetrator of the hacking incident may prove impossible due to limited forensic evidence left by the attackers, creating investigative and policy uncertainty over the issue. Although long-standing vulnerability will always be a case to be considered across outlets in the US, with cybersecurity experts flagging the internet and ATG systems as critical risks for over a decade. Yet operators continue to leave these devices unprotected despite federal guidance. Commentators agree that Tehran has developed a strategic pattern of exploiting low-security US critical infrastructure as a cost-effective, deniable means of retaliation and power projection during the geopolitical tensions, of course, caused mainly by the current US war on Iran. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us tonight on the Kwedu Report. If you are just joining us, the Kwedu Report is a program brought to you by Hericom Media, where we look and delve into all the most critical and topical stories from around the globe, where we try to dissect them and give critical analysis as well as commentary. You can follow, like, and follow our page on Kwedu Classics on Facebook, on Instagram, and on X. You can also read the latest news on the Kwedu Report, on Kwedu News, on our website, www.news.hericommedia.com. Till we meet again in the next edition of the Kwedu Report, have a good one and have a good night.